All right, so we're diving into Anchored VWAP today.
Just like it, yeah.
You brought a quite a stack of material here.
I did.
Looks like we're going pretty deep on Brian Shannon's maximum trading gains with Anchored VWAP.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from the forward and intro,
Okay.
chapters on institutional background and market sentiment,
Right.
all the way to AVWAP components and strategies, even some appendices.
Wow.
You really went for it.
Well, it seems like you really want to go deep on this. So
Yeah, definitely.
I figured we'd bring out the big guns.
Excellent. All right, so
Nah.
let's jump right in.
Okay.
What is Anchored VWAP,
Yeah.
and why should we care?
At its core, Anchored VWAP, or AVWAP, is a way to visualize the average price a stock has traded at over a specific period weighted by volume.
Okay.
You can think of it kind of like a smarter version of dollar cost averaging.
All right.
If you were to dollar cost average into a stock, your average price would essentially be the VWAP of your investment.
That makes sense, but
Yeah.
isn't regular VWAP already a thing?
Yeah.
What makes Anchored VWAP so special?
So the magic of AVWAP is its flexibility.
Okay.
Regular VWAP resets every day,
Right.
which can be very limiting with AVWAP. You can choose any starting point,
Interesting.
a specific date, a news event,
Hmm.
the moment of a key breakout, even the very first minute of an IPO.
Wow.
This lets you really zero in on how the market is reacting to very specific events or trends.
Okay.
It provides a much deeper level of analysis.
So I could create an AVWAP that starts at the moment a company announces like a surprise earnings beat.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You're essentially creating a benchmark that reflects the volume-weighted average price since that event.
Hmm.
It's like a custom-tailored tool for understanding market dynamics.
That seems incredibly insightful.
Yeah, it is.
I can't help but notice that Brian Shannon's journey to becoming an AVWAP expert wasn't exactly conventional.
Oh, yeah.
The forward mentions him basically hacking trading software
Yeah.
back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's what makes his perspective so unique.
Mm,
He wasn't content with just the limitations of existing tools.
right.
So he created his own ways to backtest ideas that weren't even possible with the software that was available at the time.
He was a pioneer,
Yeah.
forging his own path
Totally.
to uncover the power of AVWAP.
I love that.
And speaking of power, we've got to talk about institutions.
Yeah.
They seem to be obsessed with VWAP,
They are.
but their trades are massive.
Massive.
How do they even use these algorithms without completely distorting the market?
That is a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of why AVWAP is so valuable.
Okay.
For individual traders like you, institutions can't just buy or sell millions of shares all at once.
Right.
It would send shockwaves to the market.
Yeah, they would crash the market.
Exactly. So they use sophisticated algorithms to break down these huge orders into smaller chunks and execute them strategically over time,
Okay.
aiming to get a price as close as possible to the VWAP.
So these algorithms are like stealthy ninjas quietly buying or selling in the background,
That's a great analogy.
trying to blend in with the natural flow of the market.
Yeah.
I like that.
So here's where it gets really interesting for you.
Oh.
By understanding how these institutional algorithms work, you can essentially see the footprints they're leaving behind
Interesting.
in the form of the AVWAP line.
So it's like having a secret map that reveals their trading activity.
You got it.
That's cool.
It is very cool.
So instead of being caught off guard by those big institutional moves,
Yeah.
I can actually anticipate them and potentially even trade alongside them.
Precisely. But it's not just about tracking the line itself. Shannon emphasizes that AVWAP is also a window into market psychology.
Okay.
It reveals how traders are reacting to price changes, both individually and collectively.
Ah, the good old crowd psychology element.
Yeah.
We all know emotions play a huge role in trading,
Huge.
but sometimes it feels like this abstract concept.
It doesn't have to be abstract. Think about it this way. Have you ever bought a stock that immediately tanked and then felt hesitant to buy it again, even if it started to recover?
Yep.
That's anchoring bias at work.
Yeah.
We all have these mental anchors based on our past experiences,
Right.
and they absolutely influence how we perceive value and risk.
And then there's FOMO,
Oh, yeah.
the fear of missing out,
The fear of missing out.
which seems to be amplified in today's fast-paced market.
Absolutely. FOMO can drive us to make totally irrational decisions, chasing stocks that have already skyrocketed, only to buy near the top.
Right.
But this is where AVWAP can be a powerful tool for keeping your emotions in check.
Okay.
Seeing a stock repeatedly rejected at the AVWAP might give you pause
Hmm.
and help you avoid jumping into a trade that's fueled more by FOMO than sound analysis.
So AVWAP isn't just a technical indicator.
No.
It's a way to understand the emotional forces at play in the market,
Yeah,
both our own biases and the collective sentiment of the crowd.
exactly. And that's what makes it such a powerful tool for making smarter trading decisions.
So we've only scratched the surface here,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
think this is a good place to stop for now. But
That's
we'll
it.
pick it up in the next part.
Sounds good. Now let's explore how AVWAP interacts with support and resistance,
Okay,
revealing the footprints of institutional activity.
that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about support and resistance.
Right.
But how does AVWAP add another dimension to these levels?
So remember, institutions are using VWAP algorithms
Right.
to buy and sell massive amounts of stock.
Uh-huh.
This means that the AVWAP line itself becomes a focal point for their activity.
Okay.
If they're buying near the AVWAP, it creates demand at that level, which can prevent the price from falling further classic support.
Makes sense. And if they're selling near the AVWAP,
You guessed it.
then that adds to the supply,
Exactly.
making it harder for the price to break through.
Resistance.
Resistant.
The beauty of AVWAP is that it's not just some arbitrary line on a chart.
Right.
It's a dynamic representation of where institutions are likely accumulating or distributing shares.
So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Kind of, yeah.
Traders see the AVWAP acting as support or resistance,
Uh-huh.
and then their actions reinforce that behavior.
Precisely. And this is where market psychology really intertwines with technical analysis.
Okay.
Think back to Shannon's example of the 50-day moving average.
Right.
It often acts as support simply because so many traders believe it will.
Uh-huh.
The same principle applies to AVWAP.
Okay, so we can use AVWAP to identify potential support and resistance levels.
Yes.
But how do we know when these levels are likely to hold strong
Well,
or break down?
the slope of the AVWAP is crucial.
Okay, I remember Shannon discussing that.
Yeah.
The slope of the AVWAP.
Whether the AVWAP line is trending up, down, or sideways, it tells us a lot about the underlying momentum of the stock.
So if I see a rising AVWAP, that's a bullish sign.
Exactly. A rising AVWAP means that on average, buyers are more aggressive than sellers.
Right.
They're willing to pay higher prices, which pushes the AVWAP upward, indicating a healthy uptrend.
And a falling AVWAP would be the opposite.
Yes.
A bearish signal.
Precisely, it suggests that sellers are in control, and the path of least resistance is likely downward.
Okay, what about a flat or sideways AVWAP?
Yes.
What does that tell us?
So a sideways AVWAP indicates a period of indecision.
Oh,
Neither buyers nor sellers have a clear advantage. The stock could be consolidating, forming a base for a potential breakout, or simply drifting aimlessly.
so if I see a stock with a sideways AVWAP, it's probably best to wait for a clearer signal
Yeah, exactly.
before jumping in.
Why risk your capital in a choppy market
Right.
when you can wait for a more decisive move
Makes sense.
and a stronger trend to develop?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Good.
But Shannon doesn't just use AVWAP to identify support and resistance, right?
Right.
He also talks about using it for entries and exits.
He does.
Can we dive into that a bit?
Absolutely. In
Yeah.
fact, this is where AVWAP becomes truly actionable.
Okay.
Remember those two approaches we discussed earlier?
Uh-huh.
Buy the touch and enter with momentum.
Right. Those sounded interesting.
Yeah.
Remind me how those work again.
So, buy the touch involves buying a stock when it dips down and touches the AVWAP line. Anticipating a bounce, it's a more aggressive approach, capitalizing on those short-term pullbacks.
Okay. And enter with momentum is more about waiting for confirmation before jumping in.
Exactly. You're looking for the stock to show signs of strength after it touches the AVWAP.
Okay.
A low increasing volume. It's a more conservative approach
Right.
that aims to reduce risk and increase the probability of success.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between catching the move early and confirming that the buyers are truly in control.
Precisely. And remember, these techniques can be applied to short selling as well.
Oh, okay.
Just in reverse, you could sell the touch when a stock rallies up to the AVWAP, or enter short with momentum after it breaks down below the AVWAP and shows signs of further weakness.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered entries.
Yeah.
What about exits? How does AVWAP help us protect our profits and manage risk?
One of the simplest and most effective techniques is trailing your stop loss along the AVWAP.
Okay.
As the stock moves in your favor, you gradually raise your stop loss to just below the AVWAP line. This way you lock in profits as the trend progresses, and if the trend reverses, you're automatically taken out of the trade with a minimal loss.
So it's like having a dynamic safety net that follows me as I ride the trend.
That's a great way to put it. It takes the emotion out of exiting a trade.
Right.
And lets the market dictate your exit point.
I like that. But what about those times when the AVWAP doesn't hold?
Yeah.
Shannon mentioned something called support and resistance failure.
He does.
How do we handle that?
So remember, no indicator is perfect.
Right.
Sometimes, despite all the analysis in the world, the market will just do what it wants.
Of course.
But here's the key: volume is your friend.
Okay.
A true break of support or resistance is usually accompanied by a surge in volume. If the AVWAP breaks with heavy volume, it's a strong indication that the trend has reversed.
So volume acts like a confirmation signal telling us whether the break is legitimate or just a fake out.
Precisely. And speaking of confirmation, Shannon emphasizes the importance of anchoring AVWAP to specific events, not just the start of the trading day.
Okay.
This can be incredibly powerful for understanding how the market is reacting to news earnings reports or other significant catalysts.
Can you give me some examples of how this works in practice?
Sure.
I'm really intrigued by this idea of anchoring AVWAP to specific events.
Let's say a company announces blockbuster earnings.
Okay.
And the stock gaps up significantly instead of chasing the gap.
Right.
You could anchor your AVWAP to the opening price of that gap and observe how the stock behaves relative to that line.
So if the stock continues to trend higher and holds above that AVWAP, it's a sign that the momentum is sustainable.
Exactly. You've captured the sentiment shift that occurred at that specific moment.
Okay.
And the AVWAP gives you a framework for riding the wave of that momentum. And remember, this technique isn't limited to earnings reports.
Right.
You can use it for any event that you think might significantly impact the stock's price, a product launch, a major merger announcement, even a change in Federal Reserve policy.
This is starting to feel like a superpower.
I know, right?
But what about those time-based events Shannon mentions?
Yeah.
Week to date, month to date, year to date.
Those are great for putting price action into a broader context.
Okay.
Anchoring your AVWAP to the beginning of the week, month, or year allows you to step back from the day-to-day noise and see the bigger picture.
It's like having different lenses to view the market through short-term, mid-term, and long-term.
That's a great analogy. And by combining these different perspectives, you can make more informed decisions about when to enter, exit, and manage your trades.
This is all making a lot of sense. But I remember reading about those advanced concepts Shannon introduces, handoffs and pinches.
Right.
Those sounded a bit more complex.
Yeah.
Can we revisit those?
Sure.
And clarify how to apply them in real-world trading?
So those advanced concepts you mentioned, like handoffs and pinches, those were all about recognizing shifts in momentum.
Okay.
And identifying those key moments where the balance of power is changing in the market.
So like when a stock breaks out of a tight range.
Exactly. Or when it suddenly accelerates after a period of consolidation.
So how do we use AVWAP to spot those shifts?
Well, let's start with handoffs.
Okay.
Imagine a stock has been trending steadily higher along a rising AVWAP.
Right.
Then suddenly it breaks out above that AVWAP with a surge in volume.
Okay.
That's a handoff. It's like the buyers are passing the baton to even more aggressive buyers.
So we're anchoring a new AVWAP at that breakout point?
Precisely. You're essentially resetting the clock and creating a new benchmark for measuring the strength of the new uptrend.
And that helps us identify areas of even stronger buying pressure.
Exactly. You're looking for the stock to hold above that new AVWAP, make higher highs and higher lows, and continue to attract more volume.
It's like a chain reaction of bullishness.
That's a great way to put it now.
Okay.
Let's talk about pinches.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
A pinch occurs when two AVWAPs are converging, creating a tightening range. It's like the stock is being squeezed between two powerful forces.
And that signals building energy.
Exactly. It's like compressing a spring. Eventually something has to give.
So we're looking for a breakout from that pinch.
Precisely. And the direction of the breakout is often determined by the slope of those converging AVWAPs.
So if the AVWAPs are sloping upwards, the breakout is more likely to be to the upside.
Exactly. And vice versa. If the AVWAPs are sloping downwards, the breakout is more likely to be to the downside.
This is all starting to click now.
Good.
What about short squeezes?
Short squeezes.
Those can be pretty wild.
They can be incredibly volatile, but also very profitable if you know how to trade them.
So how does AVWAP help us navigate those situations?
Well, remember, short squeezes are all about market psychology.
Right.
It's about recognizing those moments when short sellers are trapped
Mm-hmm.
and forced to cover their positions, driving the price up rapidly.
Hmm.
And AVWAP, with its focus on volume-weighted price action, can be incredibly valuable in spotting those setups.
Okay, walk me through what I should be looking for on the chart.
Sure.
What are the telltale signs of a potential short squeeze?
One classic setup is a stock that's been trending lower, maybe for an extended period,
Mm-hmm.
but then suddenly starts to reverse with increasing volume.
Okay.
Now, if this reversal occurs near a key AVWAP level,
Right?
especially if it's a multi-day AVWAP from a previous low,
Hmm.
it could signal that short sellers are starting to feel the pressure.
So they're trapped below that AVWAP line.
Exactly. And as the price rises, their losses start to mount.
So it's almost like the AVWAP acts as a trigger point for the short squeeze.
That's a great way to think about it. And as more short sellers are forced to cover their positions to limit their losses, it creates a self-reinforcing cycle, driving the price up even further and faster.
That's amazing. But how do we know when to get in on a short squeeze?
Yeah.
And even more importantly, when to get out before it reverses?
That's the art of trading, isn't it?
I guess so.
There's no perfect formula,
Right.
but AVWAP can provide some valuable clues.
Okay.
You might look for a decisive break above the AVWAP, accompanied by a surge in volume as confirmation that the squeeze is on.
Okay.
And always have a clear exit strategy in mind.
Right.
Don't get greedy, and don't be the last one holding the bag when the music stops.
Good advice. This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
What I appreciate most about Shannon's approach
Yeah.
is that he doesn't just focus on the what of AVWAP.
Right.
He delves into the why, helping us understand the institutional behavior,
Yeah.
the market psychology,
Absolutely.
and the underlying forces that drive price action.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, this is just the beginning of your AVWAP journey. It's a tool that you can continue to explore, experiment with, and refine to fit your own trading style and goals.
Exactly. It's all about constant learning and growth in this ever-evolving market.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave you with a final thought from Brian Shannon.
Right.
He says, the only thing that really matters in the market is price action, only price pay.
Wise words.
So as you continue your exploration of Anchored VWAP, stay focused on the price action, the volume, and the story that the market is telling you.
And never stop learning.
Great advice. Thank you.
You're welcome.